Okay, as a brute fact, yes. A logical fallacy would be something that violates that accidental brute fact reality. Yeah, okay. When you epistemically violate the ontology, that's a fallacy. So when you say something that goes against the reality of the universe, that's a fallacy, sure. But there's nothing within that accidental existence that demands that you don't commit fallacies, right? So a universal imperative, universal is here referring to at all times, everywhere, pertaining to all people, at all times, everywhere, it doesn't matter. And imperative is a must do. That's what it means. It's something that you have to do. Like if you want to keep hydrated, you must drink a liquid like water. It's a must. So what I'm saying is that, sure, you have the accidental reality, and you can even claim that there's fallacies if you're contradicting it, but there's nothing in that accidental reality that's a universal imperative for you to not contradict and not commit fallacies. That doesn't exist in that reality. See what I'm saying? There's nothing telling you that it's fallacious for an accidentally existing ape to misconstrue reality, which is accidental to begin with. That's not there. You don't get to just assert that. Okay, we'll touch upon that again in just a sec because I'm almost done. So, I wrote a note to myself saying that there's a reason why I hear that when I listen to people like that. And I said, I hear that due to consistency. Yet there's no universal imperative to be consistent on atheistic evolution, which is why atheistic evolutionists are only ever consistently inconsistent. Although I will note, this guy, Tom Jump, was shockingly consistent during a discussion we had, because I made this three-part statement to him, okay? On atheism, truth is accidental, as is our ability to discern it. There's no universal imperative to adhere to it, nor to demand or expect others to adhere to it. Okay, let me just go through that again. So, on his view, truth is accidental, but so is our ability to know it. Okay? Then there's no demand upon me to adhere to it. I don't have to do, just because it was accidented into being, that means I have to kind of change my life to fit it. No, there's nothing there like that, nor for me to demand other people adhere to it. I hope you can appreciate how that absolutely collapses all atheism and atheistic evolution. That's it. That's the end of it. Period. That just demolishes all of it. Because once truth is accidental and our ability to discern it, and I'm not called upon, it's not imperative for me to adhere to it, and I can't demand others adhere to it. That's it. That's the end of it. And his response was really just to swap out the word accidental for random or chance. That was it. And I granted it to him. Call it with, use whatever synonym you want. I don't care. Swap out accidental for random or chance. It's still the same thing. And he agreed with all that. So then I had him reiterate about 5 times. So you're saying that this discussion we're having is really just about having fun, because that's what he had said. This is just about having fun, based on subjectively, personal preference-based hidden assumptions. Okay, so what I was telling him is, if you agree with all of that, then the discussion we're going to have is just about our subjective personal preferences. That's it. Like saying I prefer one kind of ice cream over the other one. That's it. You might prefer to adhere to reality. Sure, you can. Oh yeah, you can. An atheist can have that personal preference. They want to adhere to reality. That's fine. But you can't go beyond that and say that it's a must or an ought. It's not an imperative. It's just a subjective, personal preference, and I'm throwing in that it's based on hidden assumptions, incidentally. So there's something that's informing him that that's how he should think about reality, that it's the sort of thing he should engage or adhere to. And to me, that hidden assumption is something like meta, that we really need to touch upon that, because it's just an assumption that's hidden away somewhere, and it's causing him to do that. And I'm going to keep wanting to go back and say, well, let's look at the thing before this thing. Let's look at the assumption that caused you to say this thing. That's one reason I really annoy these guys so much, because to me it's like they have an abyss of assertions, right? A bottomless pit of assertions. That's all it is. The whole, it's assertions all the way down. And I'm constantly saying, but there's another one, but there's another one. And I understand there's axioms, there's properly basic beliefs. We all have to start somewhere with something that we just assume or grant, because if not, I couldn't even have words coming out of my mouth that make any sense. That there's certain things, okay, but when you can discern the hidden assumption, you want to hit that, and there might be one below that one. So bottom line is that on atheism, there's no premise, right? No foundation, no establishment, no nothing for truth, logic, or ethics. And I mean, if I had some more fancy book learning, I would say metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics, but whatever. Truth, logic, and ethics. Which is pretty much everything. Truth as the brute fact, ontology. Logic is our epistemic description of it. And ethics is what we do, like how we are to behave based on those things. So they have no premise for truth, logic, or ethics, nor for adhering to them, nor for demanding that other people adhere to them. Okay, so this has all been to get down to the question of what do they want from us, which I could have done in 1 minute, but kind of needed a little bit of background to kind of get us to when we start thinking about what do they want from us. Well, they would want us to accept evolution, atheistic evolution, as true, because they believe it's true. And they would say, I not only believe it's true, I can prove to you that it's true because there's evidence. But even then, when the claim is that we should only believe in things for which we have evidence, that's not a universal imperative on their kind of universe. That's not there. It's not there. That's something an accidentally existing ape, that's a byproduct of random biochemical reactions within the haphazardly evolved brain of an accidentally existing ape. And they thought, hey, this is a good idea, so everyone else should follow this. No. That doesn't exist. That's just, and I'm not saying, of course, I believe that. I don't think, it's not that I'm saying it's not useful. I'm not denying any of those things. I'm just saying that it's not a consistent aspect of their worldview to say something like we should only believe in things based on evidence. Because there's no universal imperative in their worldview that says that, and there can't be. Okay? So then what do they want from us? They want us to accept the truth, but they have no premise upon which to demand or expect us to do that. They want to show us evidence, but they have no premise upon in their worldview for us to accept evidence. I mean, honestly, when atheists ask me for evidence of God's existence, I tell them, well, wait a minute. Step number 1 is for you to justify your demand for evidence. Okay? Now that's like super meta level. It's like, wait a minute, if you have no justification for demanding evidence from me, it's not incumbent upon me to give you any evidence. You got to take step 1. And they don't, and they can't. Believe me, I've had that discussion, dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times. So it's kind of like when atheists, they're very used to just kind of showing up on the scene and saying jump. And we, especially we Christians, oh, how high? But I tell them, well, you tell me to jump, I'm going to ask you why. Jump, why? And that's it. That question, it's over with. That's because the only response they can give me is, well, because I really want you to. And then, well, why should I care what you want, right? I mean, you have a personal preference that you want me to jump. Why should that be a concern of mine? So, like, for instance, using that metaphor and applying it, give me evidence. Why? Because we should only believe in things based on evidence. According to what? There's nothing in your worldview as far as universal. That's just a personal preference of yours. See, it all breaks down to all the same stuff. No matter what it sounds like on the surface, it all breaks down. That's why we're going meta level and we're kind of digging down to just kind of see it's all the same exact stuff. It's all the same stuff. So that's been my metaphor, and I've said that to atheists many times. You show up, you say jump. I'm not saying how high. I'm asking you why, and then it's over with. Because you got nothing. You got nothing except, well, it's my personal preference based on hidden assumptions. And so I always point out to them also that they made a bed. They made their bed. And boy, it's a beautiful looking bed. It's really impressive. I mean, it's a King Og of Bashan size bed. You know what I'm saying? But you refuse to sleep in it. I'm just saying, hey, let's watch you sleep in it. Are you going to sleep in it? You made it. I'm just watching it. If you're going to, I'm just keep showing you your bed. I just keep showing it to you. And you want nothing to do with it. You want nothing to do with it. But the problem is, that's me being consistent. I'm saying, hey, if you made your bed, you should sleep in it. The problem is, in their worldview, there's no universal imperative for them to be consistent enough to make their bed and sleep in it. I mean, I recognize that. That's how much that worldview is a failure at such a fundamental level that it fails before it even begins. That's how bad it is. That it just falls apart instantly. So, let's go with this. Let's say that, let's forget all this stuff, okay? I'll let you have your 2 hours back. Let's say that evolutionists, atheistic evolutionists, or look, atheistic evolution is true, we can prove it to you 100%, and they can. Let's just say they can. Oh boy, okay, we're done for. Creation science, forget all that, it's obviously all wrong. There's 100% undeniable, verifiable, repeatably testable proof, not even evidence, proof that atheistic evolution is absolutely true. Period. Let's just formulate that's the world we're in right now, okay? Let's just grant that. So then, what if I say, oh wow, who cares? I don't want to believe it. Right? Because the scenario is there's no universal imperative for an accidentally existing ape to believe he's an accidentally existing ape. So it doesn't matter. If anything, that would open the door wide for me to say, hey, you know, I want to believe in God and creation science. Because it's not incumbent upon me to believe what's actually true, what's actually real, what the facts show, what the evidence shows. There's nothing within that system that would demand of me that I accept it, even if it was 100% proved. It does the opposite. It opens the door for me to do what used to be called a Darwinian survival mechanism, by the way. Well, where did this concept of God come from? It was a Darwinian survival mechanism. It offered humans a way to deal with the harsh world that's all about survival of the fittest and competition and danger, you know, so they came up with this idea of a father in heaven who's watching over them. And I've asked atheists, by the way, if you believe theism is a Darwinian survival mechanism, why are you trying to damage my ability to survive? Why are you trying to talk me out of it? oh, because now we know better, we've evolved beyond, you know, they do believe that they're more evolved than thou, by the way, that's for sure. But I hope you can appreciate everything I've been saying comes down to that if their worldview is true, it doesn't matter that it's true. If their worldview is true, it opens the door for us to just say, okay, but I don't care, because I have a subjective personal preference that I want to believe that God created us. And if consistent, there's that problem again, if consistent, they're going to have to say, okay then, I guess there's nothing wrong with an accidentally existing ape believing in something that isn't true within an existence where adherence to truth is not a universal imperative. See, that would be consistent. That would be consistent. And now, and another last part of this is that we can survive by ascertaining and adhering to empirical truth. Yes, sure, of course. Of course. That's a good survival mechanism. But you can also survive by being like completely deluded. I remember just flipping channels one day, happened upon a news story about where a tsunami had hit and like destroyed half a city, you know, really horrible stuff, okay. But the news story was about how there was a primitive tribe that generally lived close to the shores, but they had moved inland, and so they survived the tsunami. It's because one of their tribesmen had told them, you know, the sea hasn't taken somebody for a long time and it's hungry. And so they moved inland. That's completely deluded. That's ridiculous. That's not true. That's just fantasy stuff. It's delusional. So what? They survived, right? It didn't matter that it wasn't true. They survived. So, you see, on atheistic evolution, the bottom line, the most important thing is survival. That's why we try to be the fittest. That's why we compete with others. That's why we spread our seed and have children. It's survival, survival. So that's the whole kit and caboodle, right? Well, guess what? On that worldview, even the instinct to survive is accidental, right? It wasn't created. It wasn't designed. It's a mutation. It just sort of happened. Even that. And boy, am I glad it happened apparently to the first living thing, because if not, you know, oh look, molten lava, I'm just going to kind of, oh, that's the end of life on Earth, you know. Oh, I'm going to take in nutrition because I somehow have within me the ability to process nutrients accidentally, you know. Why? To survive. Why? Well, it's another thing. Even the instinct to survive is accidental on that worldview. So it's not something you are, there's no universal imperative to survive. Sure we want to, sure we'd like to, but it is, when it comes down to just an idea, another one of those subjective personal preferences based on an accidental mutation somewhere down the line that caused it to desire this thing. I mean, you see what I'm saying? No matter what road we go down, we keep ending up in the same exact place, which is that the whole thing is collapsed. The whole thing allows us to think that it's collapsed, by the way, even if it hasn't. Even if they say, but this is the actual truth about the universe. Yeah, but you're allowing me to think it's not, even if it is. That's how bad it is, okay? That's how bad it is. So that, for instance, all the stuff I said about in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and linear time, cause and effect, scientific method, all. Even if, no, that's dumb, that's just a bad argument, that doesn't work, that doesn't fly, that's not viable, it's not cogent. So what? I'm just an accidentally existing ape, right? So what if I'm wrong about reality? I mean, right? Even then, I mean, no matter where you look, you're going to see the absolute collapse of this worldview based on that worldview. That's how bad it is. And that's why I'm talking about the meta-apologetics level, so that you didn't really hear me tonight talking about the intricacies of biological systems, right? You've heard me talk about why that's even being discussed amongst people who have even no expertise in that area. They're not really talking about science. They're talking about worldviews. And they want you to give up yours to accept theirs, and there's no universal imperative for them to even expect that of you, much less demand it. So that to me is what I wanted to present tonight, and just to leave you with that thought that once you start poking and prodding the person who you're talking to, and you're getting into these issues, that would be to me more advantageous than talking about intricacies of biological systems, is what is this all about for you? Right? What is this all about? It's obviously a worldview issue, and are you being consistent to your worldview when you're asking me to accept it, even though consistency is not a universal imperative on their worldview. So that's what I have for you tonight, and it looks like we have a few minutes left for questions, but we don't have any time for answers, but just ask a bunch. Okay.
So equally, they would say, I don't have any imperative to believe your Christian worldview because I'm perfectly at home with no imperative to believe what I believe. And so, have you convinced anyone with these arguments?
You know what? Since I mostly interact with people online, that is a very tricky issue. Because they just, when they're tired of replying, they just stop. And I don't know what's happened to them, right? So I couldn't really say. But I have had instances like right now I'm in a discussion where the guy's just saying, look, I'm just happy with uncertainty. I just believe that we can't really be certain of anything.
You're certain about that.
Exactly. Are you certain about that? See, if there's something you're certain of, then we can start building up a worldview based on truth, because you can't even deny, right? You can't even support your claim, because you're defeating it by stating it. That's how bad it is. But sure, when man is in rebellion against God, and this is what it's all about, right? It's a combo deal of us being salt and light, us breaking down arguments, us sharing the truth, and the Holy Spirit doing the part of changing the person's heart, you know. But it's important, and to point out to them how their worldview is failing, like around them, even as they're trying to use it. And so, for instance, one more thing before I get to you. For instance, when I have said, hey, if you want evidence from me, first you have to justify your demand for evidence, I've been kind of shocked that the dozens and dozens of times I've used that tactic, the reply is generally, well, if you want to convince me, you should give me evidence. It's not, well, of course I can, because evolution, atheistic evolution is the real truth. And so I have a functional worldview and I can justify my demand for evidence. It's nothing like that. It's like they recognize that they're done right then and there. They're done for. It's over. And so they just tell me, well, if you want to talk me into it, then you should. And then that discussion goes where it will. Yeah, Terry.
So I was going to make the comment, a lot of times I go a step above that. If evolution is true, we ended up in a cold death, why do you care what somebody else thinks, or why do morals make any difference? When it gets down to it, there's nothing that matters.
And see, that's why, that's part of why...
Could you repeat that question, please, Ken?
Yeah, would you...
From the podium, please.
Yeah, he was asking about how if that's their worldview, then why would they really be concerned about truth and morality? Well, I would say ethics, but that's another technical issue. So that's what you were saying, right? In their worldview, why would they really be concerned about those things?
Or about anything, because you're going to end up dead and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, see, that kind of becomes my lifespan can beat up your lifespan type of discussion, where they'll say, well, but it's because we have a limited amount of time on Earth that we should, and I always think about Carl Sagan's pale blue dot discussion, right? I wish I had the quote with me where he's saying, well, we just live on a pale blue dot in the backwaters of the universe, so why can't we all just get along type of thing? It's like, well, because in part that's a non sequitur. I could say, well, we live on a pale blue dot in the middle of the backwaters of the universe, so let's conquer and pillage and, do whatever, because ultimately it doesn't matter, right? And so then it becomes, well, but don't you want health and well-being? Well, sure, of course I do, and I want it for me and mine. I don't necessarily care for you and yours. In fact, if I know that you don't like being violently oppressed, then I'll violently oppress you, because then I'll get what I want from you, right? And then atheistic evolution makes evil, pain, and suffering even worse by guaranteeing that me as the evildoer in that case would have my fun and ultimately get away with it. There's no transcendent judgment, That's one of atheism's consoling delusion, is the delusion of lack of ultimate accountability.
The Hitler syndrome.
So, atheistic evolution makes evil, pain, and suffering even worse by, I'll say it this way first, by guaranteeing that it's for nothing. But it's worse than that, because then evil, pain, and suffering become part of what benefits human evolution. And I could quote you Sam Harris, Walter Sennett Armstrong, other atheist evolutionists who have said, for example, that rape plays a beneficial role in human evolution. I could quote them, I'm not just saying that. Okay, so, and then Richard Dawkins was asked if that rape is immoral, is as arbitrary as that we evolved to have 5 fingers instead of 6. And he said, yeah, you could say that. So, it makes it even worse. So, do I have a personal preferences for being, for my health and well-being and that of my family, or maybe my city and state and country? Well, sure, but what does that say about everyone else on earth? What if my neighbor has a nicer car than me? I can go through all the trouble of getting a better education, a better job, and ultimately getting here, or I could introduce this gray matter to a projectile, see you later, now I got your stuff. Do we love our neighbor, or do we eat our neighbor, right? All right, I'm going out there. Okay, anyone else? Yeah.
You, as I understood it, you said that evolutionists would ask you for evidence for God, and you would say that they had no justification for asking you for that. But that's not true, because evolutionists are empiricists, and the only thing they believe in is evidence. Your claim isn't true.
Well, on their worldview, it wouldn't matter if my claim is true or
I'm
not.
not talking about whether or not it matters.
Okay.
We're talking about
Yeah.
they don't care whether it matters. They want to know whether or not you have evidence for the existence of God, and they ask that because their whole approach to the world is based upon evidence and empiricism.
Well, I would question that premise. I don't see how we could talk about evolutionists, all of them, and say that that's their premise, that they're empiricists, so they have a right to demand evidence. That would be one issue. And obviously, because of what they believe, it's obvious that that's not how they're functioning. And that's why they're resorting to things such as storytelling and interpreting fossils or interpreting biological systems, and then telling us stories about unobserved, unproven, unevidenced common ancestors, like a mythological chimera. That's why all that stuff is there. So, no, I would not accept the premise that they are empiricists. And even so, well, hold
How
on.
did you say they're not empiricists?
They
That's
are.
crazy.
Well, it's based,
That's a ridiculous statement. No, that statement is ridiculous. Their whole worldview is based upon what they perceive as being the evidence.
what they what?
What they perceive as
Oh.
being the evidence. And whether their perception is correct or not, they think it is correct, and their belief system is based upon evidence.
Oh, so see, the way you put that, that's pretty much my point. You just kind of collapsed everything you built up a second ago.
No,
Yeah.
I did not. No, I didn't.
You talked about their perception and whether it's right or wrong.
True or false, or whether
But
it's
that's not.
Right. So they're like, whether they're right or wrong, they're saying this, therefore we must go by that. That doesn't work, it's a non sequitur. But see, remember, I'm talking about atheistic evolutionists, okay?
Well, so am I.
Okay, therefore, remember my closing statement. Even if they have a subjective personal preferences for being empiricists, and even if they can prove with 100% certainty that they're